Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the stream. My name's Craig. This is Gonzo, and we together are part of the German Football Spotlight channel. We're trying something different today. We're experimenting because that's how you become better in life, right? You try different things. So instead of just, spending hours and hours and hours trying to script a Hollywood-style reaction video to all the Bundesliga action from the previous weekend, I thought, do you know what? Let's try it as a live stream because we can always get some VOD content out of it later. So you get a double whammy, right? You beautiful people out there that are either viewing now or from the future, then you get a double whammy. So again, this is a reaction to all the Bundesliga action from match day 29. The pivotal point is obviously going to be the Klassiker, and what a game that was, by the way. Yeah, okay, so this was billed as a grudge match, a rivalry, one where form of both teams goes out the window because, again, it's played out in that very unique atmosphere. And there was a legitimate, legitimate belief that there'd be goals in this game because Munich at the minute with their defence of Dyer and Kim, well, and the way that Big Brain Vincent Kompany likes to set that team up as a 2-4-4 when he's going forward, it's very vulnerable to just any attack, as Inter proved, when they came to the Allianz the other day. So Munich are great going forward, but they can't keep clean sheets. And Dortmund are in a bit of a mess. They've conceded, 53 goals this season? Maybe 55 now? Two teams that are very inconsistent, that can't keep clean sheets. But again, with that atmosphere around the game, it's gung-ho, it's cavalier, it's almost like a basketball game. And it didn't really play out that way in the first half. The first half, it felt like, well, we can look at the stats, right? There we go. Check out the stats. It's unfortunate you can't see it by half, can you? There's probably a... And do you know what? I've not come across that yet. So if anyone is in the chat or anyone watching this VOD in the future has got a recommendation to somewhere where we can go and look at, check out stats post-match by different halves, that would be fascinating to see, because I've not found that. But yeah, so looking at this is pointless. So we'll come back to... There's the score anyway, look, see? So the first half seemed cagey. Let's have a look at the lineups. There you go, right? So there's the lineups of the two teams. Erby gets another chance. That was his fifth consecutive game. So he's played in the Champions League. He's played 4 Bundesliga games now. That back line, like I say, of Kim and Dyer, pretty unconvincing. But to be fair to Vincent Kompany, it's a patched up team, right? It's a makeshift team because he's struggling with a lot of injuries across all positions, within his system that he likes to play, which is that 4-2-3-1 classic football manager, double pivot, Goretzka, Kimmich. Interesting that Goretzka played, because I thought he might have been saved for the Inter game, which is coming up this week on... I forgot what Wednesday is now. What's Wednesday in German? I forgot what it is now. Anyway, I thought he might have gone with Polinia and Kimmich. I mean, Kimmich is captain, fantastic, so he was always going to play. And then Muller comes in as the number 10, which was... we felt like that was a smart move. Vincent Kompany experimented by putting Guerrero in the number 10 against Inter. Didn't really work. Again, I think he had 37 touches in that game. No through balls, no key passes. He did have a couple of shots. There was one that went over the crossbar, but we're going down the rabbit hole now. We were talking about a previous game and we should be focusing on the Klassiker. Anyway, so it was like there was a cry from all the Bayern fans, 400,000 members, the biggest supported club in the entire world. Please try Muller at number 10. And that's what he did, right? Stanley on the left, Elise on the right, Harry Kane up front. And again, interesting post-match, there seems to be a lot of people being upset because they paid a lot of money for him. They paid, 100 million-ish euro, and he hasn't scored now in 3 games? Or maybe it's 2. Did score against St. Pauli. Actually, he did score against Augsburg. Yeah, scored against St. Pauli, scored against Augsburg in the Bavarian derby when they came from behind to win 3-1. Didn't score in the Champions League, I recall, and then didn't score in this one because it was Guilherme Gnabry. Yeah, so there's some question, but it's Harry Kane, right? Come on, like people have off games, but I suppose it's interesting that he was potentially marked out of that game by a back three of Dortmund, which again has been inconsistent. And it's funny there was a back three. It's funny that Kovac went with a back three in this game in the Klassiker, whereas in Barcelona he didn't. He went with a 4-2-3-1 against Barcelona, and they were caught with their pants down and lost 4-0. This game he switched to a back three. He's brought in Niklas Süle. Again, that's somebody that we felt should have played against Barcelona because he's 6'4" and 5 foot wide. And it worked. It kept Bayern Munich at bay in the first half of the Klassiker when it was 0-0. This is all over the shop, isn't it? Sorry. There's the lineups anyway. First half, KG. I recall Lise had some interesting shots. Kane was involved in the action too. Second half, Maxi Bayer scores that goal. Wow. Almost like Bayern Munich caught out. They're still trying to warm themselves up. They're still trying to run off the beer and the sausage at half time, and they're caught, and it's 1-0. And then after the hour mark, there's some inspired substitution from Vincent Kompany, which is he brings on Serge Gnabry and Guerreiro to his credit. But the Gnabry substitution, that seemed to change the dynamic of the game, right? So Guerreiro scores, and it's a lovely move. It must have been Sané cutting in on the left. Unless, no, he'd already gone off for somebody. Or maybe it was Gnabry. Maybe he did it himself. But Muller was involved anyway. Muller was involved in that in the build up to that goal. Lays the ball off, and Guerreiro strokes it in for 1-1. And then Gnabry's goal was gorgeous, right? It was a solo slalom and effort, cutting in past the back three that looked just very confused. And then the ball ends up in the bottom corner for 2-1, and the momentum swings like it does in football. Someone gets the goal, your tails get up, there's energy. People start to find more space. The passing's more fluid. It's crisper. The progressive carries from people like Kimmich and Elise are happening more frequently. And then bang, the 2-1 in front. And then again at that point, our prediction was that Munich would win it 2-1. So we're sat there thinking, great, smug face. We know what we're talking about here, right? We never said it. We never go as far as predicting whether a team's going to score first and what the result's going to be, because this isn't a spread betting channel or a betting in running or a live betting channel. This is one real person, two real people that care about the Bundesliga enough, and then we make predictions about how the games are going to go. Sometimes we might throw it out there and say Johnny Burkhardt will score for Mainz, or Tim Kleindienst will get a goal because he's already scored 15 this season. We'll do that. But in this game, we just felt it was going to be a 2-1 Munich win. It was going to be a game where they were caught up in the moment. Thomas Muller in his last ever Klassiker would be pivotal, as he was in that equalising goal, and they would win it 2-1. And I felt great. We know what we're talking about. And then out of nowhere, and it was Jurassi, wasn't it, in the build-up? Which again, it was a guy that just went missing against Barcelona. He looked isolated in that game. I think I made a joke on the review video that there was a lot of distance between the Dortmund 5, and that produced this whole throwaway comment of, it sounds like a prison drama, right? The Dortmund 5 trying to escape from Barcelona, a bit like, escape from LA featuring Kurt Russell. Well, escape from Barcelona with Julian Brandt looking lost. But there was a lot of distance between that midfield and Jurassi up front. And he missed a few chances. But, that happens, right? Professional sport. Whether it was the occasion, whether it was just the fact that Barcelona knew how to react to him, or whether he just got some nerves. It doesn't matter. It's human, right? Anyway, this game, it was ball juggling. It's ball juggling in the 6-yard box, right? He manages to flick the ball up twice, get a shot in on the volley. So it's a fantastic reaction save from Herbig, and then Anton follows it up, right? Because there's no defenders. How Kim and Dyer are looking in opposite directions, and the ball ends up at 2-2, and with 15 minutes to play, I think that's the point where again the momentum shifted. You started to think, actually, Dortmund could win this. They could win this 3-2. Forget the prediction. Again, forget the form of the two teams coming to this game. This was a Klassiker. It was, yeah. Despite the fact that everyone thought, well, Dortmund are not the team that they were under someone like Klopp when the Klassiker really meant something. Dortmund have fallen off. They're in 8th so far in the Bundesliga this season. They've scored 43 goals, 44 goals, conceded 53. They're in 8th position. What sort of a threat could they possibly pose Munich? They might nick a goal because that Munich backline is fragile, because it's makeshift, because of injuries. But somehow, they managed to score 2 goals and sit tight and hold on at the end despite some late pressure from Munich, which you would expect. Home team, 75,000 fans, rile them on. They've just conceded a goal. They're trying to get a winner because they're under pressure. And that's the other variable, right? Which is something we'll come on to next, which is the impact that Dortmund could have had on Munich, not just in the title race for the Bundesliga, but for the rest of the season, which is how we build it in our preview show. If you find that on YouTube, look at German Football Spotlight, which is the name of the channel. Find the preview video for match day 29, which was all built around the idea of the Klassiker being the focal point, which it should have been. But you'll see that we were trying to come up with a narrative that there's an impact. Dortmund can have an impact on the rest of Munich's season, both in the Bundesliga champion, in the title running and the Champions League. Because if they'd lost this game, all of a sudden they've lost 2 in a row. The form's gone. They're feeling sorry for themselves. They've got to pick themselves up. They've got to go to the San Siro, the Giovanni Meazza Stadium, where they're 2-1 down, where someone like Muller's fighting for his life because this could be the last time it could be his last ever Champions League game coming up this week. So if they'd have lost this, the morale would have been completely sucked out of him. And that, arguably, there's still a big mental test on Vincent Kompany's capacity as a manager. How's he going to rile his troops? Thankfully, they didn't lose. The game ended 2-2, right? So in isolation, okay. But earlier in the day, because this was a top-spiel game on Samstag, Leverkusen, as we'll find out, right? No spoilers, but you should already know it, right? Because, well, you come here for a reaction, but it's interesting that this ended up 2-2. Leverkusen dropped points, and we can analyse that game thoroughly soon. So what could have been a potentially 3-point gap, it ended up being 4 points because of that late Dortmund goal, and it's impacted how maybe not that much of an impact, but Munich have got to go away to Inter and get a result to stay in that tie and progress in the Champions League. But at least they're not doing it having come off the back of a loss and feeling sorry for themselves. So if we do a quick review of the stats, which is fascinating. Look at that, see? So Dortmund scored 2, having 3 shots on target. Again, credit to Jurassic for almost producing that magic on his own. With that, he's played a bit of futsal. Puts his own shot on goal. Munich had 10 shots on target, but only scored twice. The substitution, like we say, was pivotal, bringing on Gnabry when they did, because he's had a lot of critics this season. Again, if we were scripting this, I would serve up all sorts of data about his performance this season. I'll probably do that in the VOD. But they scored twice from 10 shots on target. Look at the possession. Munich so far this season have been ranking in the 60 to 65% possession at home, so they're dominating teams. was always going to be the way, right? Although that's interesting, they were outrun by Dortmund, who covered more ground, made more sprints. I assume a lot of that was to catch up with Michael Olise and positionally try and get ahead of people like Olise. Dortmund tackled hard, look, so I assume that was the likes of Kimmich and Goretzka. And Goretzka an interesting choice because it felt like he was going to be rested. They played Paulinho. Goretzka would have been match fit and, motivated for this game against Inter in the week. Pass efficiency, that's interesting. Well, again, Kimmich's always comes out with the most touches per game because all the ball goes through him, right? He is the main ball carrier from the keeper, out of defence, looking wide to try and find a pass, or I assume he was linking up more with Thomas Muller. Interesting that Daniel Svensson at the back covered a lot of K's. Yeah. Actually, when it came to man of the match voting at the end, there was a choice. Muller, Olise, Kerbal in goal. I mean, Kerbal had a fantastic game. I thought Gregory Korbel played well against Barca, even though he let 4 in. That Barca could have been 3-0 up after 7 minutes if it wasn't for him pulling off some smart saves. Well, I suppose he saved 2 of them. The other one was that audacious solo effort by Lamine Yamal. He tried to bend it in from an oblique angle, but Korbel kept them. He did his best to keep the scoreline down because it could have been more than 4-0 against Barcelona. And he pulled off some really sharp saves in this game, as did Erbic, to be fair. The young lad's learning, debutising for Manuel Neuer. That midfield, if you come back up to look at the lineups, yeah. So again, Dortmund came with a back 3, which felt like a smart move. 5 in midfield, well, the 2 wing backs, so the 3 in midfield. Pascal Gross played, so it's not a surprise that they had a bit more steel. He was suspended for the Barcelona game. Ozcan, interesting choice again. He's had his critics this season. Julian Brandt, I know there's a few people that are frustrated that he's playing as frequently as what he is, because he's a bit like, well, you can't see it on camera, can you? But he's a little bit like this guy. He's a bit like Mesut Ozil, right? He blows hot and cold. Yeah, I was impressed. I was impressed with Dortmund. Girassi had a much better game than he did against Barcelona. Maxi Bayer was electric. He got his goal, the go-ahead goal to kick off all the action in that second half. And Chan, the captain, because he's the special one, according to Niko Kovac. He's come in. Interesting that his brother's his assistant manager. I found that out quite recently. Anton had a respectable game, scored his goal as well. And Nicolas Soule, he came in and propped up that back 3. So yeah, it was a resolute performance. You could argue, well, they conceded 2 goals. Yeah, but they were going to. Munich's always going to hurt you when they go forward because they've got electric talent. They've got Olise, they've got Sane, Gnabry came on, Muller was at 10. He's a mischievous, wily character. He knows how to wind people up. He's very committed. He's highly intelligent. He's got an IQ off the charts. He's got all that experience because he's a one club man that's played professional football for 25 years. He got Harry Kane up front, who on any other day, you put a ball into him, he'll find the space, and he'll put a shot off and he'll score. So the fact that Dortmund only conceded 2 and managed to fight their way back into the game and score 2, yeah, all credit to them. What's that done for their push for Europe? Well, we can check that by looking at the table. So again, spoiler, you can see the gap with Leverkusen, 42, right? So they're on 42 points. So as we know, top 6 places in the Bundesliga going to Europe. 6th place is Freiburg currently. That's the Conference League. Mainz in 5th. That's the Europa League, and the top 4 is Champions League, which is what Dortmund need to do because they're already out of the cup. I mean, the DFB Pokal final is the 24th of May between. Well, it's a fairy tale story, isn't it? Between Arminia Bielefeld from Liga 3 and Stuttgart. So it'll be a classic, that one, the final. So Dortmund's only chance of... Well, that's not true, is it? Because they are still... Technically, they're still in the Champions League, although staring down the barrel of a gun, being 4-0 down. At least they're at home this week. In fact, it's tomorrow, right? It's Tuesday. So, they're at home at the Westfalenstadion in front of the yellow wall. They've pulled deficits back, although not as big, right? Didn't they play... Was it Malaga? I believe. They've played Malaga and turned a deficit round, and last season against Atletico in that high-scoring second leg of the semi-final. But it wasn't a 4-0 deficit, was it? Right. So that's going to be... They're going to look for the yellow wall to be the 12th man. Yeah, we should have a bell, shouldn't we, for cliches? Ding! Yeah, there you go. So, anyway, 42. So they are 3 points behind Freiburg. There's 5 games to go. The season, I believe the last day is May 17th. Next set of games, it's Easter, isn't it? Easter's coming up this weekend. Well, I know people have different faiths around the world, different religions, but, Easter's taking place. So no game on Friday because it's Good Friday. So the next bunch of games are Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, and we can see here, can't we? We can have a look at who they're playing next. So Dortmund's next game, they were home to Gladbach, which, again, Gladbach are in 7th, and they're also pushing for Champions League, right? So, as we saw by looking at the table again, Gladbach above them by 2 points, and they're 4 points off Leipzig. So, it feels now, even though the draw against Munich is highly commendable, we've got to clap that one in for that performance, especially after coming out of a game where you've been smashed 4-0 away from home. Morale's going to have been suffered. So we've got to give credit to Niko Kovac for picking his team up, for setting them up in the right way with a back three, being resilient, holding in there in that first half, nicking that goal with Maxi Bayer. Okay, then they go 2-1 down. Then they come back into it and they manage to draw the game 2-2. That's a pretty good turnaround, right? That's a pretty good 4 or 5 days worth of football for Dortmund. Although, again, with 5 games to go, they need to win every single game and be reliant on other people dropping points. So the next game, as we would say about a relegation battle, is a sect puncture, right? It's a 6-pointer, effectively, but at the top half of the table, because Gladbach is a threat. They're a threat for Dortmund getting into the Champions League. And actually, if we look at all their fixtures, it'd be funny if they had to play Freiburg, wouldn't it? Who they got to come? Hoffenheim, who were down in 15th. Wolfsburg, who were completely out of form, have now lost 4 in a row. Leverkusen, wow, I mean, come on, like, Dortmund could completely... Well, actually, the title race could be over by that game. But imagine if this was the 22-23 season all over again. Jude Bellingham's last game at Dortmund. There were 2 minutes and a kick away from being champions before Mainz scored that last-minute goal. And Munich won their game. We could see a repeat of that. So Dortmund could have an impact on this title race whilst also secure their Champions League spot. But they've got to win every single game. They've got to beat Gladbach, Hoffenheim, Wolfsburg, Leverkusen, Holstein Kiel, who potentially could be already down by that point. So that they might field the kids, as they say, give the youth some chance. So yeah, a lot of pressure on Dortmund. They've got to find wins and are dependent upon other results. And I think we'll take a break there because analytically, we've done all we can to cover that without providing some actual key data points. But the key data point is it was Bayern 2, Dortmund 2, and it was a pretty impressive performance. It was rearguard. They were resilient. They stayed in the game. For Munich, well, we saw the difference in the table. We'll have a look at it again. Because of Leverkusen fluffing their lines and drawing, then that gap is as it was, right? Still 6 points. So not only did Gladbach lose to a last-minute goal. They conceded an own goal to put themselves on the back foot. Oh, my. So they're getting an own goal from Freiburg, sorry. What am I talking about? Yeah. It's an own goal from Christian Gunter very early on. Oh, and then they lose it in the 90th minute to a substitute who scored his first goal this season. That's a real shock, honestly. In fact, there you look. Patient build-up from the back, looking for openings. The ball shuffled on the right flank where Ritz and Doan had space to cross. He chips a perfect ball across the area onto the onrushing head of Manzabani. So that, although it's not credited, is it credited as an assist? If we look at the match centre. Yeah, it is, yeah. There you go. Yes, that's right, because he was on 7 assists before this game. And that's his 8th. That's still an incredible stat, though, right? That 15 goal assists from their 2 wide players, along with 16 goals. Wow. Okay, fascinating. Back to the stats. Let's just have a look at how the game sort of played out. So Freiburg came, had 7 shots on target and scored twice. Gladbach will feel that's disappointing, only managing 1 shot on target at home with that midfield again. With that attacking level of threat in midfield. That, yeah, hack, play, Honorat. I mean, Julian Weigl, yeah, I mean, he's got the ability to, he's got the vision to see a pass and to put a long ball up there and find out a man. Just seems disappointing, really, that a home team only managed 1 shot on target. And actually, look, they were chasing the ball. Look, Freiburg were dominating that game. Got outrun as well. Outrun, out-sprinted. Were dominated by crosses and corners. Yeah. So technically, Freiburg scored all 3 goals in that game and took the points. And the impact that's had on the table for Freiburg, well, as we said in our preview, it was going to be interesting because actually Freiburg have now jumped above Gladbach with that win and have sneaked into the last European spot for next season. They're currently in a Thursday night football Pat Nevin special. Pat Nevin's a Scottish footballer who I believe used to play for. He played for Celtic, didn't he? Yeah. Again, if there's anyone in the chat or anyone watching the VOD, please correct me on that. But I'm convinced anyway. Pat Nevin in the UK when football used to be broadcast on Channel 5. I don't know how many channels you've got domestically in your individual countries, but in the UK we've got, core terrestrial channels. Everything's changed, hasn't it, with the with digital and cable service providers and people streaming games, like people like DAZN, and then people like us, that are commentating, and you've got the DFB player and also all those different channels where you can get live football. Anyway, used to be a Thursday night on a football broadcast on Channel 5 was the voice of Pat Nevin, and yeah. So currently, as it stands, Freiburg are playing on those Thursday night footballs. It might even be covered by Pat Nevin, but we've still got 5 games to go. It's only a point difference. And Freiburg are only 3 points behind Leipzig for a Champions League spot. Freiburg, they've got to travel to Wolfsburg next on Easter weekend. As we've already talked about, Wolfsburg have now lost 4 in a row. Then they've got to play Leverkusen at home, which again could have an impact on the title. Then they're playing away at Kiel, which could impact the bottom of the table in the relegation fight. And then look at that, they've got to play Frankfurt on the final day of the season with Frankfurt. That could, this is a fascinating run in to the end of the season. As for Gladbach, well, they're away at Kiel as well, so they can inflict more damage. Or Kiel could look at that and think, we could, if we're lucky and plucky and we work hard, we could nick that. Then Hoffenheim, so they're playing a team that's in 18th, 15th, away at the current leaders, and then they're playing Wolfsburg, who by then might have lost 6 in a row, 7, 8 in a row. Who knows? Anyway, as it stands with that one, though, we got that prediction wrong. Freiburg turned up and scored all 3 goals and took the 3 points. Feels a bit like a smash and grab. Julian Schuster will be happy, though. He'll be happy because he'd lost 2 in a row, and he stopped that, and he's back on the winning track. Whereas for Gladbach, well, that stops a 3-game unbeaten streak, which included 2 wins. That's their first loss in first loss in 5. Sorry, first loss in 4. Yeah, a lot of these teams are running out of games in their respective fights, either to stay in the division or stay in the Bundesliga or fighting for Europe. It's fascinating. Right, I'm back, and I've just noticed Put On the Shades is in the chat, and it's given me 4 thumbs up. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's exciting. Thanks for joining along with the ride. I'm assuming those thumbs up means you're enjoying the content, not a reference to the direction that Werder Bremen are travelling, their trajectory in the Bundesliga. But either way, yeah, both are very much appreciated. Thank you so much for that gesture. We're just going to jump back in then, just to sort of round things out. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at the final game of the weekend, which was Frankfurt versus Heidenheim. Dino Topmuller versus Frank Schmidt. There's the lineups for the two sides. So 4-2-3-1 for Frankfurt. Santos in goal. Kevin Trapp was there. He was up in the. I mean, it's a massive ground. I've never been to it. It's on my dream list. It's a huge stadion, the Val Stadion, or the Deutsche Bank Park. Huge. You know, you can sit right at the top. He was up there in the gods, watching it in a nice casual buttoned-up shirt and jumper. Anyway, Santos was in goal, the Brazilian. It was Thete, the Belgian, next to Robin Koch. Tuta, Rasmus Christian, the Gypsy from Leeds of the Midlands as a right back. Young brother to Rasmus, Oscar Hoyland, alongside our one to watch, Ellis Skiri, the other DM in that double pivot. And then John Matteo Bohoya on the left of the attacking midfield spots. Young Uzan in the middle. Jaibi on the right. And then Hugo Ekete leading the Frankfurt line. What's this? Quick comment from Put On the Shades. Enjoying the content stream. Munich Dortmund was great. Everything the Prem is missing in quality. Keep up the good work. Absolutely, all those 3 points. Thank you for the support. That means so much to me. It's obviously it's not real, right? It's not real, but he feels like he is. I totally agree. Yeah. What did I watch this weekend? Apart from all the Bundesliga football, I was part of a watch along with Liverpool hosting West Ham through someone else who is a regular content streamer, Taffman10. Found him through his FM saves. What a fascinating character. But yeah, I agree. Just in terms of the atmosphere as well, right? It feels like it's unrivaled. I love the fact that the Bundesliga games where the home team will stand in a line and either take a lot of shit from the ultras or take their praise, and everyone jumps up and down doing the pass now and they clap it out, right? I love that. I love that relationship that the players have got with the fans, which you don't really have, do you? You don't really have that in the Premiership. Slight side note, as someone that goes to Hull City, Tim Walter, German, came in from Hamburg. I mean, that guy, he didn't last very long, lasted 18, 19 games. Away at Luton, he complained, his defence of not acknowledging the away fans was that it was a long way to walk and it was too wet and he wanted to get inside and change his clothes. I mean, come on, mate. You gotta have a dialogue with the fans, especially when they're travelling. And Germany, as I found out last summer, is a huge country, right? Literally. I went from Leipzig down to Wolfsburg. That was like a 7-hour train journey. So the fans are covering some distances, right? So yeah, I love that relationship between the fans and the ultras, especially in the home section. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. Stick around anyway because we're nearly done. We'll have a quick look at Heidenheim then. So they're going with what's that? 3-5-2, or technically a 5-5-3-2, I suppose. Sieberslin, Manika, Bush at the back, Kevin Muller in goal, young Franz Kratzig on loan from Munich, Nicholas Dorsch, Jan Schnoppner, who was our one to watch, Jimmy Traore on the right. It's not Jimmy Traore, obviously. And then Beck and Piringer, the Swiss guy up front. And how did it finish up? Yeah, it ended up being a bit of a walkover, right? Frankfurt turned them over, which was a shame because, yeah, I'm not surprised, really. Again, you look at those two sides on paper, there's more quality in that Frankfurt side. And again, if I just quickly remind myself, I mean, I don't really need to. Our prediction was that Frankfurt were going to win 2-0. And like most of the games and most of our predictions were so close. And then either the home or the away team scores that extra goal and completely destroys it. We said 2-0. It ended up being 3. If we look at where the goals came from, so Faris Chaibi, who was playing in the middle instead of... Who was he playing instead of? Because that's usually not Collins. Usually Brown, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah. Chibi sets up the first goal for Bahoya, and at that point I'm feeling really smug because we called him out as a one to watch. The 19-year-old French attacking midfielder. That was his second goal this season for Bahoya. As for Chibi, that was his first assist. Robin Koch, that guy's played in the national team, right, up until recently. Has he played for Julian? No, maybe he hasn't played for Julian Nagelsmann. He was playing under Hansi Flick, I know that much. He scores his second goal of the season. Quadruple subs made by Frank Schmidt to try and claw the deficit back. And then right on later, 71st minute, Nathaniel Brown comes on for Chaz Ozan, finds Ekate, who makes it 3-0, and that's Ekate's 14th goal of the season. So I'm going to have to do some work when we get into the data hub and change up where these players have finished. Yeah. Frankfurt 3, Heidenheim 0. Again, not surprising. We got a prediction wrong, but that's okay. Look at the stats. 7 shots on target out of 11. Credit to Heidenheim. Came and had a go. Again, very stubborn team. I see some more of the ball. That's interesting. More passes as well on the board. But again, football, what's it about? It's about space. It's about finding other players. It's about decisive thinking. It's about vision flirt. It's about catching the other team out of possession. Both cover the same distances. More sprinting going on from Frankfurt. As you can see, Ellis Skiliar one to watch, and Ekate, along with Sir Lord Conte, who came on as a sub at half time. Yeah, there you go. Kind of regulation home win, to be fair. We did call it, but we didn't call it at 3-0. We did call it out. What's that done to the table? Well, for Frankfurt, that does consolidate their third place. They're now on 51 points. Again, forget about the top two because that's a narrative within a bigger story. Frankfurt are now 3 points clear of Leipzig, even though Leipzig did win. They've obviously won 2 more games because they've won 15 games this season. As for poor Heidenheim, well, they're stuck in that relegation playoff spot. But you know what? If you'd have said to Frank Smith at the start of the season, you're going to finish in 16th and you're going to have to play a one-off game to stay in the Bundesliga to bit your hand off. Absolutely. Or would have tilted his head even further to the left. Oh, a bit savage, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's have a look at what's coming up next for Frankfurt. Frankfurt are away at Augsburg, so again, that's another battle for 2 teams going for European places, or Frankfurt will be looking to steal their Champions League spots. They host Leipzig again. That's another team that's going for Champions League. Away at Mainz. Well, up until recently, Mainz were above them in third. Frankfurt were down in fourth. So that's got fascinating implications for the end of the season for Champions League spots. St. Pauli, the visit to the Deutsche Bank Park in the penultimate game, and then in the last game of the season, they're away to Freiburg. Again, that's really interesting because you never know. By that point, Freiburg would probably be needing the points, depending upon how Mainz and Leipzig are getting on. So this run-in, oh man, I can't wait to see how it all plays out. And you can see how it all plays out here. Again, please like, subscribe. It is free. This content is coming at you free from two very passionate fans of the Bundesliga. As for their opposition, Heidenheim, what's going on with them in terms of their fixtures? How does their runs? So they host the leaders, Munich, next up. Oh dear me. Mind you, the Heidenheim's previous last home game was against Leverkusen, and it was an ex-Aston Villa, Emmanuel Buendia. He did a Leverkusen and scored on the 91st minute. So they narrowly lost out to Leverkusen. Let's see how they get on to Munich. Then they travel to Stuttgart, who again are pushing for European places. Then they host Bochum, another Sechspunkter. That's two teams that are, there's only 2 point gap between them. Then they go to Union. By that point, I suspect Union will be safe. And then they host Werder Bremen, who could very much be playing for European football in that final game. So, yeah, very interesting how this season's going to close out. So the two teams lined up like this. 4-2-3-1 for Stuttgart, the home side, taking on a... Oh, what's that? 3-5-2? Technically a 5-3-2, because Felix Agu and Mitchell Weiser, they're both wing backs. Yeah. We may as well finish off Werder, right? So, Michael Zetter in goal, Amos Piper, Marcus Friedler, Ned Stark. It's not Ned Stark, obviously, because he's a Game of Thrones character. Forget his first name. I could tell you though, couldn't I? Michelin Star. Oh, close, right? Said it was N. He said it was N. So look at the lineups again. Need to fix this back button. Felix Agu, left wing back. Mitchell Weiss on the right. Sinny Leinen, who was having a stormer of a season, is a defensive midfielder. He's playing the likes of Romano Schmidt, allowing him to go forward, and Jan Stager, the Norwegian. And then we've got Oliver Burke and the mighty Marvin Dushk up front. We'll come on to Ollie Burke and that redemption story soon. As for the starting lineup for Stuttgart, Alexander Nubel in goal. He's on loan from Munich for the season. He might go back. He might stay where he is. We don't know yet. We'll have to follow that contract situation. Maxi Mittelstadt, left back. Sturrigu, I forget his first name. Leonardis. Of course he is, because he's Swiss Greek. Again, I think I've made that comment that you don't get many of them for a Euro. Big Jeff Chabot, who did go off with a hamstring injury, and I want to say it's Felix. It's something funky in it. Finn. There you go. Finn Yelts. Love that name. Always reminds me of Adventure Time. We're getting there. Chris Furyk, Nick Voltemada, Jamie Levelin. That's the three. Playing behind Ermin Demirovic, who's the hat-trick hero in their 4-0 thumping away to Bochum. 4-2-3-1 versus 3-5-2 or 5-3-2. And this is how it played out, as you can see. Fascinating game. Stuttgart took the lead on the 19th minute through Leonardis Sturgu. That was an assist from Angelo Stiller, no relation to Ben. He was our one to watch, by the way, for Stuttgart. It's quite a feisty one. Number of yellow cards flying around. Atakan Karazor, Jens Stark. Voltemada gets a yellow and then gets sent off for his second yellow card, which... And I've watched this back a few times, and even the commentators were sort of questioning, really? I mean, he's a wiry lad, isn't he? Nick Voltemada. He's tall. He's like 6'4". He's quite thin, but he's all arms. You know, he's be wicked on the dance floor. He's very Peter Crouch actually, which there's a compliment in there to both of them somewhere. So he gets sent off, and all of a sudden they were a player down in a key part of the pitch, which provided more space. And as we know, football is really all about occupying and then finding the space and then being able to pass around a team, right? So there was more space opened up on the pitch, but you wouldn't have thought it, right? Because for right up until that Oliver Burke winning goal, you wouldn't have thought Stuttgart were down to 10. Because they seem to be in possession, creating their own chances, and Leonardo Bittencourt, well, he came on as a sub for Jens Steg, who was suffering a little bit with injury. He came on. It was his through ball because, again, Stuttgart, well, they still have 4 people at the back. It's not like they were defenders short, although Big Jeff did go. Did he go off? Yeah, he went off for Ramon Hendricks in the first half. Yeah, Ramon Hendricks is no slouch. He's younger. He's pretty quick. And they were caught out, basically. Caught out of ball watching. It was a brilliant run from Ollie Burke, who, first time finish. He's quick. You really like the acceleration on Ollie Burke is quite frightening. Like one-on-one with anybody. Yeah, he just made mincemeat of that. He ate that space up and put it beyond Nubel, and it was on the 90th minute, 2-1, and they saw the game out. There wasn't much injury time, as there doesn't seem to really be in Bundesliga football, not this year anyway. Brennan still had time to swap out Romano Smith for Marco Grill, who came in from... He was playing in Austria. He might have been playing for these lads. Oh, you can't see, because... Anyway, here, SK Reader. I went there. You can check out my photos of that on Instagram, at German Football Spotlight. Yeah. Werder Bremen were lucky in a sense because they capitalised on having the extra man. That's 3 games on the spin that they've won now. Yeah, they've scored, 7 goals now in 3 games. 3 wins on the spin, 2 away wins in a row. Actually, they've won 3 away games on the road. Like I say, it's the second best away record in the Bundesliga this season. And we'll come back and just have another quick look to see it out. The stats for the game. They came and had 4 shots on target, so they matched the home side. The possession was very much, 51-49. Well, funny enough, they put in more passes, even though they saw less of the ball. Neck and neck, I guess, in terms of distances run, slightly out sprinted by the home side. 1 more tackles because, again, that's a feature actually. Both, if I remember this rightly, Kiel, Bochum, Heidenheim, and Werder are some of the top 4 teams in terms of like just launching themselves into tackle, making blocks, making key interceptions. Basically, just they're a stubborn team. Werder. They're a stubborn team. It's just a shame that they had a bit of a dip in the new year and just lost a lot of games. They went 4 games, 4 losses on the spin. They could be a lot higher in the table if it wasn't for that. Still, I want to watch for Stuttgart. So he matched Stanley Leyland in terms of like running 12Ks for the game. Oliver Burke, like I say, is lightning fast, 35.15 kilometres per hour. And Nick Voltemada, before he was sent off, was winning everything that was put up to him in the air. However, football's a game of space, and it takes a second to score a goal, and that's what happened for Werder Bremen. If we look at the impact on the table, so look for the Stuttgart, Augsburg moved above them, so they dropped down to 11th. They were on 40 points, which is 5 short of Freiburg, which is the last European spot. Again, looks like Stuttgart are going to be dependent upon other teams, other results. Stuttgart next up. Oh, they've got to host Heidenheim, who again are scrapping for their Bundesliga status under Frank Schmidt. They then go and... Oh, that's weird. Oh, that's home game, sorry. So they go away to Union Berlin. They host Frank Schmidt's Heidenheim. They go away to St. Pauli. So they're playing two of the bottom four teams back to back. Then they play Augsburg, who themselves have gone above them, who are vying for Europe. And then they start the season away to Leipzig, who could be pivotal in terms of their Champions League places. As for Werder Bremen, like we said, that's 3 wins on the spin. And their fixtures, they are at home to Bochum, 2 home games on the spin, home to Bochum, home to St. Pauli, away to Union, away to Leipzig, hosting Frank. So they, by the time they get to Heidenheim, they could be putting on a send-off party for Heidenheim into the Zweite Bundesliga by that point. But yeah, as it stands then, Werder have gone up a place into 9th, same points as Dortmund. Could they? I mean, we've been saying this in the preview show. Could Brennan? Could they really nick it into Europe? I don't know. I mean, they'll be feeling hurt that they didn't make it through to the DFB Pokal semi-final. I mean, they lost to the fairy tale run that Arminia Bielefeld are having. They lost that quarter-final game 2-1 and went out of the competition. 9th, 42 points, 3 points off Freiburg. I mean, they've got to keep winning, but they've won 3 in a row now, so they're doing everything they can to keep their chances up.